Welcome to the Todd DeVoe Show, exploring the best ideas and lessons for leaders.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine land. And I'm Todd DeVoe, the host of the Todd DeVoe Show. And today we have, we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to talk about cybersecurity, physical security, and just kind of, getting involved into the field that we're doing. And I have a great guest with me today, Andrew Owlett. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Todd.
So how did you get involved? Like, what was your career path? Because I ask this question a lot because I always find it interesting that everybody comes from all over the place.
Yeah, so I've had the most non-linear pathway, I think. Well, actually, I can't claim that, right? There's going to be somebody else out there that has way more unique pathway. But I started my career in fire EMS and kind of navigated through that, and then eventually got into consulting, became a government employee for the federal government, and then navigated myself to private sector. And along the way, I leveraged like those foundational skills that a crisis and emergency manager has, which are really like good stakeholder engagement skills, really good program management skills, and just learned how to leverage those for different types of experiences, and just kept raising my hand up and saying, hey, I want to help out with that, and just kind of navigated that way.
Well, so what are the biggest challenges that you've faced, throughout your career regarding to bring you to where you are today and with your expertise?
So some of the challenges that I had to overcome were learning how to actively listen and not jump in thinking that I had a solution to a problem. And when I was early on in my career, I always used to say, yeah, let's do this. And I didn't actually listen to what the problem was being communicated. And it ended up going down a path that was just in the complete opposite direction of where we should be going. So that was one lesson. The other one is, and I think this comes naturally over time, was just being confident in myself. And I'm still building on that. Even though it may seem one way today, it's underneath the surface, it's not that way. It's extremely I use the analogy like a duck pedaling underneath the water. That's how I'm feeling right now, even on this show. So even talking to a friendly face, it's just so incredibly nerve-wracking. So it's also building confidence. And then the third piece is just being authentic. I felt so uptight early on in my career because transitioning out of fire and EMS wasn't the most easy. But I always felt like I had to be somebody else. And over the last 5 years, I'm just myself. What you see is what you get. And it's allowed me to just navigate problems a lot easier because I'm building rapport with people as me and not somebody else.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I talk about the idea of, I call myself a retread, and I think you're going to fall into that category too. Those of us that started in fire and EMS and law enforcement, and then moved our way over to emergency management. And my journey was as simple as I was assigned to a large fire, and I was working in the emergency operations center. And I went, wow, this is actually kind of cool, and it sort of fostered my drive to get into emergency management. The hard part I had for me is, get myself pulled out of the field for sure. Right. That I still have that field attitude. What do you tell to somebody who's looking to have that career change? What's your advice to them?
So, it's funny you mentioned that field attitude. Because I definitely felt that. I also felt over the years, I'm kind of changing my mindset a little bit, well, naturally, because when I was first starting out, I was really resistant to actually mentorship. And I said, I'm just going to figure it out on my own. So it kind of leads into your question, raise your hand, ask for help early, seek and lean on strong mentors. And it's something that like after a couple of years being out of fire EMS, I was like, why did I wait 3-4 years to seek mentorship, to kind of open up and see a different perspective? I can't do it on my own. Like I was told in fire EMS, you put your head down, you do your job. And when you do something good, it's not a pat on the back and a high five always. It's keep doing that.
Right.
So the biggest thing, like somebody starting out, like raise that hand. I mean, those conversations can be a little awkward at first, and that's natural. I mean, even for me, the conversations I have today, sometimes, you have to break the ice in the beginning a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not normal to just go up to a stranger and say, hey, how you doing? It's a little uncomfortable sometimes when you don't do it and you don't flex those muscles. So,
Right.
So anyway, I would just say, be open-minded to mentorship, and, you can do that digitally, like going on LinkedIn, shooting somebody a message and kind of breaking the ice that way, or you can do it through conference events or webinars. I mean, heck, like introductions can come from any place.
Yeah. So you moved from the field and got into emergency management, and now you're doing the cyber side of things, which is interesting because there's this debate, like, is it really an emergency management, crisis management job, or is it more on the risk, or is it its own thing, or do we play together well in the sandbox when it comes to cyber? Because I mean, we've seen the results of cyber attack, right? I mean, the gas company down in the South was hit with a cyber attack, and we're worried about the power grid being hit with cyber, potentially. And I mean, everything. Shoot, we're here in the midst of a cyber atmosphere, right? I mean, heck, if you get hit cyber, can you actually operate your emergency operations center? So how did you move into cyber, and how much does cyber play into the world of emergency management today?
That's such a powerful question. So I'll first say that, one of my greatest fears before I moved into more of a converged, like cyber and physical type of security role, was one of my biggest fears, especially in being an ex-emergency manager, were those downstream and upstream impacts that cyber could have, right? Like I think of the 911 system, and I think, you hit it with a cyber attack, and then right after that you have, terrorists that hit a physical target, right? And then you can't actually pick up and call 911, and you have a massive crisis on your hands. So I think of like instances like that in public safety and everything that I think are really relevant today. And, I'm sure our adversaries are thinking of it, but so how did I move into more of a cyber role? And then let me answer that by saying the foundational skills that an emergency manager and crisis manager have are critically component across like all domains. Stakeholder engagement and management, just working with people, managing projects, teams, programs, looking at data and analyzing it. And it doesn't have to be like looking at numbers all day and trying to figure out like what numbers match up to what. It's like looking at GIS maps, and then using that to aid in other decisions that are being made at a strategic level. Like those pieces that as an emergency manager, you leverage every day can be leveraged in cyber, can be leveraged in supply chain management. It can be leveraged in IT disaster recovery, business continuity, the list goes on. And I learned over the years that everything that I'm doing complements each other. And shifting my mindset and understanding that really helped me to stand up a cyber element in one of my programs. So one of my programs focuses on cyber real-time threat intelligence. Now, that's a big word, but at the end of the day, we know information is king, and having real-time actionable information is important on both the physical and cyber side. Different threat vectors, different terminology, but how you handle it is very, very similar when there's an incident. I mean, you may need to call on different subject matter experts to coordinate, but like the ICS framework is super relevant across not just emergency management, but also pulling that into cyber. And we've been able to do that pretty successfully.
Is the mindset the same for a cyber security as it is for physical security?
My mindset's very similar. The biggest difference is terminology, and what you're looking at may take you a minute to process and understand if you're not familiar with it every day. But you can start drawing correlations if you have a really good coach, mentor, if you have really good information, if you have really good education behind you, you can kind of mesh those things together. I don't think I don't separate them anymore. I bring them together. I bring them to the same space. Leverage the same technology as much as possible, leverage the same people because they have those skills that can be complemented in both areas. I don't see them as two separate things.
Let's talk about the people for a second. When I think of cyber guys, right, I think of the people that are like, wicked smart. They're in the dark room, looking at the zeros and ones going up and down the screen like the Matrix or something like along those lines. And then we think of the physical security guys. You think of like the the guys that understand how to use tactics and whatnot to stop the bad guy from coming into the physical plant, right? Both smart people. I'm not saying that the physical security guys because they aren't smart, but you know what I mean? Like it's like this is different physical mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true, or am I completely off base on that?
Let's demystify it, right? Like I think that's important because you're hitting on something that I think people get really terrified when that word comes up, right? They're like, I can't talk to them because I don't understand them. And maybe in some cases you won't be able to because they're using different words and different terminology. But from my standpoint, the biggest difference, we're still dealing with risk at the end of the day. You're identifying risk, you're triaging it, you're bringing together teams to mitigate it, and then you're doing corrective action and lessons learned to make sure that doesn't happen again the same way it did before. And that's effectively like the life cycle of both physical and cyber. Now, are there people that are super, super technical? Yeah, in some cases there may be. But the power of technology nowadays to analyze information and provide like very simplistic views of, hey, this is what's going on. You decide what to do next. It's really kind of moving away from that like Matrix type of environment that like ones and zeros all on the screen. Does that still happen in the background? Absolutely. But technology is making it easier to digest.
Well, I know I'm going to age, but people that out there are listening who are younger probably won't get this reference. But there was a show that was on for a long time called 24, and I always think of the cybersecurity guys, the people that were in their operations center, being able to bring up the enhance the video or whatever, and then the physical security guys are more like Jack Bauer, the guys running and kicking in the doors, and so that's the other way taking a look at it. But when it comes to cybersecurity specifically, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, when you're assessing those risks, what are you looking at? Like if you're talking to somebody with a small business who doesn't have huge staff, but still, maybe makes their living via the internet, what are the cyber issues that they have to really be paying attention to? Is like, does a VPN fix everything?
These are great questions. So I'll start with the biggest thing within cyber is the human element. It's the element that you can't control like very well, to be honest. Like human behavior is very hard to predict. And we're getting better at understanding habits of people and like what they're doing, because as time goes on, we just get better. But that's one of the biggest like risks. So basic education and training around, when you're accessing something sensitive, maybe send it in or if you need to send something, send it in an encrypted email. When you go to access, different company records, turn on your VPN. I mean, if you can even access it without, that should be a hard stop. But the other things are like, don't engage on the dark web I mean, like, don't go there, because you may get yourself in trouble. Update your passwords. It's literally one of the top like 3 vulnerabilities that different companies have. If you don't have really good password management, like every 90 days, maybe thinking about what your password was and what it maybe should be, and maybe changing it. It's one of the other ways that folks kind of leave themselves vulnerable. So really simple cyber hygiene doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't. I was literally just talking to somebody today, like training and education. If you have a staff of 10, they're making board games that literally make cyber so easily digestible for somebody that's in high school, somebody in their early 20s, like to be able to grasp that the terminology doesn't need to be as complicated as it is. As an industry, like across the board, actually in a lot of industries, we overcomplicate terminology. And honestly, when you do that, it makes it so hard to make progress. So I think I saw something from CISA CISA and Jen Easterly that said, like, let's just take a massive step back and adjust how we're communicating about it, because we're not hitting the mark. And she's so right. We need to adjust it. And that goes across every industry.
Real quick, Eric Ola says that Andrew's such an awesome guy. And it looks like they interviewed him too, and he threw out a Spotify. So go check out that interview as well. Yeah, so when it comes down to it, right? I mean, like I'm a guy, older guy. I'm 53. We're not native to tech, but we're also the generation that like we're the first generation, I think, that really had computers in the classroom. We went through that stuff. We used to have to use these discs that were like the size of a record, out of the thing. So we understand the computer stuff. And I know like my kids are native to technology. I mean, my daughter runs around with an iPad for school and she's 10. So there's 2 different ends of the spectrum. Talking to the old people, right? Like, I don't even know how to get to the dark web, so don't worry about that. I heard of it. To me, it's like a mystery. Like I wouldn't even know like what keyword to type into the Google search to find dark web, right? So there's that. But how does somebody who's maybe not as computer savvy as others, what should they be thinking about for investing in cybersecurity? They're talking to the C-suite here.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Number one, my daughter is 7 months old and she loves technology. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like when she's in her teens and carrying around maybe a holographic like type of thing and going to school, right? Like, or maybe that's like 50 years ahead, which isn't that far ahead, right?
No, it's not.
We're going to be in the Jetson age soon. I would say that, so going back to your question, cybersecurity at the end of the day, it's a team sport, and there's a lot of drive in that space because the threat vectors are becoming more and more complex. They're becoming harder to manage in some cases, harder to spot because the threats are becoming more and more less visible to the naked eye. And because of that, like the talent that's around spotting cyber may be shifting a little bit. And instead of, and especially because as an industry, we can't just rely on highly technical folk anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said earlier, technology is enabling us to do stuff differently than maybe previously, maybe how media portrays it. But as we look into the future, talent may not look the same like across the board. And I think that's in a lot of different industries, because as tech adapts and does things that's enabling, business champions to do their jobs better, I think that, our roles fundamentally change. So I would say that, for somebody that looks like they're 20 years old, by the way, Todd, there's the compliment. And for folks that, are senior into their career and have a lot of tenure behind them, just create the partnerships, learn as much as you can, and understand that in 10 years it's going to change again. But by that point, everybody should be retired, right? I think that, you know, we're so interconnected. We're going, like, technology is going to change from, you know, just, well, it's already changed. We went from, you know, big box computers to laptops to iPads to wearable technology, soon to be embedded technology. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if medical device technology is going to actually be embedded in us at some point in time. And that's scary stuff, right? Like, if you think about your personal stuff, just like out there, if it's not protected the right way, it's just crazy. But I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. And you know, I'll tell you a funny story. When my daughter was little, like maybe a year old, she got so used to using touchscreen stuff that she went to change the channel instead of on the TV, and she tried to swipe the TV, you know? So it's just, that's what I'm talking about, how it's embedded into us. But, you know, you talk about technology changing, and I had to have a conversation with one of my students the other day regarding, Chat GPT. I always say that wrong, right? And I've been playing around with it. It's actually kind of fun. But I've read some stories about the chat that evidently it's trying to break up a marriage, and for one of the New York Times reporters. Did you see that story?
I didn't see that story, but it doesn't surprise me.
it just blows my mind that I was actually having a conversation saying, oh, you know, you should leave your wife, and this is how you, yeah. So, you know, so chat, the chatbot things kind of spook me a little bit. But I was telling people the other day, I did a story, and I was saying, look, at, you know, as an emergency managers, if we embrace the chatbot and have the right technology in there, how cool would it be? It is right now, it can be used, that when somebody is looking for information and they go, instead of, you know, they can text it or they can do whatever and get real time proper information to, you know, evacuation centers or evacuation routes, or, you know, what's going on, and it takes that person who's physically on the phone off the hook, literally, and allows that chat to embrace. Is technology like that, number one, do you see it as being a good thing for disaster response and emergency management? And two, you know, how do we protect that type of stuff from cyber, you know, intrusion to where it's giving bad information?
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse, right? Because with the greater accessibility of information and in the hands of so many people, it can be a risk, because the more and more people know about something, maybe the less and less they engage the right people to help them out. Maybe the information gets in the hands of the wrong people. But on the enablement side, I love the potential. I think what ChatGPT did really well is that they marketed themselves as a key differentiator, even though the technology has been around for years. Like, the technology itself hasn't been marketed in this way. And that's what really spearheaded the adoption. And it was just contagious. It was like exponentially contagious, because once one person found out about it, you know, you want to go explore the cool new toy that's free.
Right.
You know, why not explore something that's so intuitive and easy to use that you can type anything and, you know, type my LinkedIn post for today on this topic.
Yeah.
You know, can you let me know the top cybersecurity threats to small business? You know, we were talking about that earlier. ChatGPT can spit out a bunch of that. Type an email to my boss that's conversational and nice, that I'm a little angry about something. Like, I mean, it's really changing the game around accessibility. And I think, though, on the enablement side, I think about integrating ChatGPT into so many different aspects of what an emergency manager does every day, a crisis manager, and all in between, up and down. I think about, like, integrating it with ArcGIS or any GIS interface. and saying, hey, there's a disaster over here. Where are my resources to help respond right now? Or I'm picking up on something over here. Can you help me gather data around this area or intelligence so that I can have some insights? I'm just spitballing off the cuff, but it can be a really good enabler, I think, across the board. And it's not just something that's, hey, be scared of it. It's gonna completely bring you to your knees. It may not. It can be used on the other side of things too.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, I always talk about the Luddites, right? I think we should not be the Luddite and try to destroy something we don't understand. And I'll guarantee everybody out there who's ever interacted on the internet with a chat person, I'm going to put that in quotes, asking questions about a product, was talking to a bot, most likely. Especially if it was like 2:00 in the morning. There isn't like a call center, maybe, that's answering these questions. Is normally some sort of chat bot. And they'll eventually get you to a real human, but they're all the frequently asked questions go through that process. So, like I said, there's something we can embrace as emergency management to go, hey, this is the stuff that we need to talk about.
Todd, by the way, I'm still getting used to, chatting with a bot. Like there's some like awkwardness there sometimes, going back to like talking to like, I was talking about awkwardness earlier with, being in my own shell, but the piece of chatting to a bot, like I get frustrated sometimes talking to a bot, right? Like I just want a person, just give me a person to chat back and forth with. And I get it. Like some questions can be answered really easily by a bot. Like, tell me the hours of your store.
Right.
Or, what's the best phone number to call about this? Or is my flight going to be delayed going to here? Here's the flight number. Like stuff like that is really easy. But when you're talking about other things like, I got charged for X and I need a refund for Y. And I'm also noticing this, and this. Going back through 20 prompts to get me to a person is a terrible customer experience. So anyway,
true.
That was my rant on that. No relevance to anything we're talking about, but
ran away, Andrew. That's exactly what it's about. No, I agree with you. There's frustrations. That's why I say it's not perfect yet. But if you have, like I said in my piece, I did the right information in, and I'm not the guy to do this, right? We'd have to hire somebody, to run this, which is those of you that are in emergency management that are technical advanced. I mean, this might be a job for you, right? Is to be able to program that bot to be able to answer the questions specifically during a crisis, because people are nervous and they're afraid. They need information quickly. And, sometimes picking up that 1-800 number, talking to, and not, no offense to the call centers, because, we use, call centers a lot, but they have a script that they go by, and if it's not on that script, they don't know. They're going to have to put you on hold to go find out. So I mean, just takes that off that additional person off, where you can get it while you're driving down the road talking to. That's just the way I envision it. Is it there yet? No, not at all. But could it be? I think absolutely.
I think so too. I think over time, like we're going to notice that like Chat GPT and then the predecessor is going to be able to do exactly what you just said. And at the end of the day, it's also going to save companies money, right? Like it's gonna change how people work and what they work on, and I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, but going back to the cybersecurity aspect of it, we have to make sure that whatever chatbot is that you're using, can't be hacked, and you're going to have some serious security around it, because how devastating would it be that if there people are asking for evacuation routes and the routes it the wrong way because somebody's playing games with it,
Yeah, that's the piece that I get nervous of. But I think over time, I'm not sure what Chat GPT's security posture is like. But if it's not Maybe they'll start putting legal addendums at the bottom of like their chat, right? Like, don't use this for life safety, right?
Right.
Like, I could see, that's going to backfire. Like, don't come here when the fire alarm's going off telling you to evacuate a building. Listen to the life safety system and get out of the building. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
But I see going back into the idea of cyber security and physical security, having that tool. It's just like any other tool, right? It's just like ArcGIS or the freaking internet for that matter. It's just a tool that we can use to enhance our life safety and things like that. what I'm going to have you put your Nostradamus cap on, right? I'd like to see what do you think is coming in the near future for cybersecurity, and what do you think could happen, like say in the next 10 years?
So I think we'll see more physical to cyber or cyber to physical threat vectors that kind of become more and more complicated. I think we'll see that. I think we'll see the use of cybersecurity attacks as a service, like kind of like a software as a service model, but for cybersecurity attacks. We're already seeing some of that within like the ransomware space, where people are outsourcing their bad actor type of work to an intermediary who then finds people to actually carry stuff out. So I mean, those are some of the existing things that are going on in the space now. And I think they'll continue, but with technology, I think like one of the biggest things I'm scared of is AI induced cyber warfare.
Ooh. Where
you have AI doing the cyber attack on behalf of a party. And it's hard to defend because it's learning as it's attacking somebody. So for me, like, that's extremely worrisome. The other piece is, and we're seeing a little bit of this, but it hasn't made too many ripples yet. But we're talking right now, and we are computer generated images with the exact same voice of like what we have, and we're just having a conversation, but we're not really here.
Right.
And that is all cool and everything, but it's extremely scary when you start talking about bank authentication, like going to talk to a bank and saying, hey, my name's Todd, but you're not really Todd. You're an AI generated voice to that bank that's giving away all personal information that you're not giving it away. That's really hard to track. It's hard to prevent. I think that's why some companies have went away from voices as passwords, because that's an interesting piece as well. I think the last piece that I'll say that's it's here today and it's here to stay is when IT components are sourced, when they're hooked up, when they're maintained, when they're accessed out, every touch point that any piece of IT equipment has is a risk, and it modifying them. There's stuff called implantation, where you can implant stuff before it's deployed, and it could cause harm to a network. Like, and it there's a whole bunch of different ways to tamper with IT equipment. And my point is, like, I see an uptick in that as well. I don't think that's going away. I think that'll rapidly increase, and we need to get a good handle on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that we can get into. Are you familiar with Descript?
A little bit.
I was playing with Descript, and they have this ability to, in your editing, say you want to get rid of something or add something, and you do your test voice. So you go through this voice recording, and in your voice, pretty darn close to the naked ear, right, sounds exactly like you saying a word that you didn't say. And it's nice for filler, right now, but you never thought about like just typing a bunch of stuff in there and having your voice saying things that you didn't really say. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's freaky. Like, I mean, these platforms can take like 30 seconds of you talking and turn it into anything you want to say. Like, it can analyze your voice and it can take that and literally do anything with it. It's crazy.
I mean, I know we're getting a little off topic here, but I think this is interesting since we're here. I was watching these videos of, and I'm putting air quotes for those of you not watching, of Keanu Reeves. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen what you're talking about.
Oh, looking at it, you go, something is off, right? But I couldn't really point to what it was. It was like something about the Keanu Reeves that was just like a little off, but it was just like a little bit. And I was looking at it, I'm like, is that him? And I realized, oh, no way. It's a freaking deep fake video that they created of him doing like all sorts of things, like all sorts of weird things. And it was, done in jest and in interest, but I'm going, wow, there could be a point to where you don't even need, well, I'll go on just a little bit more on I know I'm on a tangent right now, sorry, but you don't even really need actors anymore because they did a thing with Harrison Ford to make him look like he was Harrison Ford of the 1980s. With him currently with just a little bit of AI, and it was just it's another one, and it's just crazy to see like all this ability to really deep fake things. So you can't even really trust the video that you see anymore, or the audio. Is it really the person or is it not?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, AI literally is everywhere, and it every year it's becoming more and more sophisticated, and there's more and more use cases. And it's funny you use the example of actors. I didn't think about that. That's a game changer, right? Like, if an actor can't make make it for filming, like, can you just use previous clips and cut them in? Like, and will anybody notice? Or if they get fired and you're 75% done with filming the movie, like, you can't just go back and hire a new actor. Like, you don't want to switch the plot. Like, can you just get AI to fill in for him? Like, it's just crazy. Like, put a green screen behind like where he would be and
right.
Just have it figured out. It's nuts. So many different like use cases, and I mean, it just makes everything that we're doing more and more prevalent, like across emergency management to cyber, creating partnerships, working together, exercising together, understanding each other and where we come into play. Like, those are the big elements.
Right. And then now on the other side of that, with the Hollywood being able to add Carrie Fisher into a movie after she passed, which they did with Star Wars, things like that, which are kind of interesting. But then you have the ability to do AI real world training, right? Whether it's disaster or law enforcement issues where you could put people in the shoot, don't shoot issues, with real time reaction. Things like this. So and again, we talk about the bad, right, or the weird, and then you can add on the other side of it. It's a tool that could do some good. So, yeah, and Andrew's like guys like you that are in there doing the security side of it that are going to keep those of us that don't know how to do the security side safe. So I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I think it's something that it's here to stay. Fighting it isn't going to do anything. I remember back in the day when everybody was like, "Oh, computers are just a fad,"
and now they're everywhere.
Yeah,
now
they're on my wrist for.
Yep, they're on your wrist. They're in your pocket. Like, they're literally everywhere. It's funny you mentioned AI and training, and like I think about gamification, VR, AR, like, and how like all of that coming together, and it brings such a big sense of realism to the table. Like, it's absolutely insane. I have a VR headset and I fly an airplane, and I'm like, I actually feel like I'm flying an airplane. It is so incredibly real. You translate that to public safety, you translate translate that to emergency managers, you translate that to so many others. I mean, it is so real. Like for me, I wish there was a cyber VR game that took you through the world of information security and cybersecurity, where you're actually sitting in a seat and you're traveling through cables, like to each pit stop, like super visual person, like let's educate people on like the most simplistic terminology on the pieces of information and cybersecurity, and then maybe where they could be vulnerable each step of the way and make it relatable. I don't know.
That would be kind of cool.
Brainstorming.
Yeah. If anybody out there knows how to create these things, get a hold of Andrew, and he'd be happy to work
Yeah,
with you.
do it. You'll make a little bit of money probably.
You know, I mean, like, you know, we're kind of running over here, but that's okay. You know, one of the things I find interesting too is that, you know, our brain. I was reading this article, and it was talking about the fact that our brain doesn't know reality from fake. And that's why like VR, you know, people who get addicted into video games, into whatever, they don't, there's no connection between what its input is coming into. It's just input, and it's how we perceive the data. And do we have the ability to pull ourselves out of it? And I think that's the thing that we have to find, you know, within how to protect ourselves and how to protect the future of being able to make sure we can pull people out of the VR or the IR area.
That's so interesting. Like I never thought about that. I did see somebody provide a perspective on AR VR like the last 2 days, and it was like the psychology aspects behind it. Like it's so real now, that to your point, like the brain can't differentiate real from fake generation of like content. And it can be really scary and traumatic to some people. So like the psychology behind that is fascinating. I mean, the things you don't think of, like, yeah, that's awesome.
Well, Andrew, we're over time, and I appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we let you go?
No, just stay hungry. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're in emergency management, like you have a lot of pathways, right? Like I took a bunch of pathways myself, and you know, just be open-minded to learning something new, raise that hand, and create coalitions and partnerships at the end of the day, because that's how, you know, we all get our jobs done with less people, less money, you know, everything like that. So that's it. It was a pleasure talking to you today, Todd. This was a lot of fun. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right, Andrew, I'll let you go. Stay in the green room for a minute. I'll be back right with you.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And, you know, when we get into these conversations regarding what technology looks like and how, you know, we could use it for good, I remember it can always be used for bad. And so this is why it's critical to have somebody like Andrew in your organization who is a cyber security professional, and really go through that steps. I think this is one of the things as emergency management, that if we have a large scale cyber attack, we're going to be right there in the midst of it. So everybody, until next time, stay safe and stay hydrated.